Hey there, welcome to another interesting session for Logic Republic. And today we shall be talking about pattern recognition. What is pattern? Pattern is the reoccurrence of an event, an idea that is so repetitive to the point that it has become a design or creation. It could also be a design or a creation that is so repetitive to the point that it is predictable. But then, because it's not something that you can see or you can touch, so people overlook it. So they take it for accident, they take it for mere eventuality or reoccurrence, and they ignore. People even hardly recognize, identify patterns. Everything that is working in every society is according to pattern. And anything that is not working in a society or in a family or in a business or in an individual, whatever it is that is not working, it's according to pattern. If you look at the countries that their politics is working for them, that the economy is working for them, it's a pattern. If you look at countries that are suffering deprivation at the highest level, countries that are characterized with unending corruption, evil, and all of that, you would also notice that it's a pattern. But the unfortunate thing about pattern is that people hardly identify, they hardly recognize. One, because it's none of their business. Secondly, because they don't even understand that these things that happen are patterns. So in the Logic Republic conversation, right, we have what we call pattern mechanics. Pattern mechanics talks about the discovery of pattern itself, what a pattern is, when a pattern is in rendition, when a pattern is delivering according to its design, it's called pattern recognition, pattern rendition. And the only way you can alter this pattern is to have what we call pattern demolition. And the only way you can have pattern demolition is when you have pattern recognition. So when you have a pattern that is working against a people or against a society, and they are unable to recognize, they cannot demolish or alter the pattern. It is until pattern recognition happens that they understand what pattern is, they understand what pattern they are dealing with. It's at this point that they can design what would be used to demolish or alter the pattern, the existing pattern. For them to alter the existing pattern, you would need not a blow. You don't need a gun. You don't need fight. You don't need warheads. For you to demolish a pattern, you need another pattern. That's the interesting thing about pattern. So we are talking about first pattern recognition. You recognizing what a pattern is. Then designing another pattern that you can use to counter the existing pattern. Now, when you have pattern in rendition, what you require is pattern alteration or pattern demolition. For this to happen, we are saying that you must have experienced what we call pattern recognition. Once that is done, that is when you can demolish the existing pattern. But then we are going to an interesting part of it. If you have identified a pattern, you have designed a new pattern, and you are going to demolish the existing pattern. If you do it casually, you are going to be counterproductive. Why? And the reason is because the existing pattern is only working because there is a force that is applied on it. There is effort that is applied on it. So if you're going to counter or demolish an existing pattern, you require another pattern with a force. What is this force? According to the Logic Republic conversation, the force is fidelity to purpose, intentionality greater than propensity. This is the force. For you to demolish an existing pattern, you require another pattern. Once you have this pattern, you need a force to apply to the pattern so that it can destroy the existing pattern and so that the new pattern will remain the new pattern. The force that you need to apply to the new pattern is called fidelity to purpose, intentionality over or greater than propensity. This is what the force is. So, according to pattern mechanics, the law states that a pattern in rendition is always in rendition, unless altered by a greater force. And that greater force is another pattern, backed up by fidelity to purpose and intentionality greater than propensity. So, what are we saying here? Let's assume that a society is not working. We need to understand what the patterns are that are working against the society, why the society is not working. The moment we discover that, we need to design another pattern that will counter the existing pattern. Once we have designed the pattern, it does not stop there. We need to adopt the pattern. Then we need to apply force. The force that we need to apply is to understand that the new pattern that we have will also become the older pattern that we found out, unless we are faithful to the purpose for which we have designed the new pattern for. And unless our level of intentionality is greater than our propensity. Unless our desire to have a new system, a new society, that desire is greater than our inclinations to corruption, to evil, to fighting, to destructions, to negligence. Unless we understand that whatever new pattern we have designed will as well fail and become like the old pattern. This is the reason why, if you look at a country like Nigeria, a dialectical, confused republic, every time you have one government, you will discover that the new government is always worse than the previous, no matter how bad the previous was. The reason is because Nigerians are governed by patterns. There's a pattern of the person who came 15 years ago, who was so bad at leadership. The people would complain, but when the person leaves office, the next government that will come will be worse than the previous. Things will be so bad that people will want change. And upon change, the next government that will come will be worse than the previous one. This has been the pattern. The reason is because we don't understand pattern mechanics, that we have been driven by deprivation and ignorance. So we clamor for change. When the change comes, the change repeats the chain. And why does that happen? It is because the necessary force that is required to apply on the new pattern is non-existent. So it is not enough for people to desire to do good. It will only become enough when they have, or when they can apply the necessary force that is required to retain the good, that is required to establish the good. This is what pattern does. So we are saying that for us to change a society or change any society, we need to understand the pattern that governs the society. When we have understood the pattern, we need to design another pattern to demolish the existing pattern. The undesirable pattern needs to be demolished by a desirable pattern. Once we have designed that type of pattern, we then need a force to apply to the new pattern to override the existing pattern. And without this force, no matter how we wish, no matter how we desire a better society, whatever new pattern, whatever change we have, will become the older pattern. And we are saying the force here is not a blow, it's not a gun to your head, it's not a fight, it's not warheads. The force that needs to apply to have change, sustainable change, lasting change in any society, is called fidelity to purpose, equals intentionality over, greater than propensity. That is the force that we need to apply to the new pattern to override completely the older pattern. Until we do this, the newer pattern will become the older pattern, and the older pattern will always keep ruling the people. So, benefits of pattern mechanics. It's time for us to begin to look at our society that a lot of things that happen do happen by accident. They just don't happen. They happen because there is a design behind it. In fact, when eventualities happen over time, they become a design. For you to counter the eventuality or the accident, you need another design. So it is called pattern for pattern. For you to destroy an existing pattern, you need another pattern. And for the newer pattern to override the existing pattern, you would need to apply force. The force that you need to apply is what we call fidelity to purpose equals intentionality greater than propensity. So, in the conversation of having a greater good, common good society, pattern mechanics is one of those solutions that are designed, are tailored to addressing all human problems. According to pattern mechanics, the law of pattern rendition, it states that PFW is greater, supersedes PFWI. And what is PFW? PFW is pure force of will. That our pure force of will supersedes, is greater than pure force of wish. PFW is pure force of will. PFWI is pure force of wish. So when we have a pattern that is destroying our society, and we think that by wish, by common wish, we will be able to correct it, or by mere prayers, we will be able to correct the pattern. We can do that for 1,000,000 years and there will never be change. The existing pattern will always govern the systems. So pure force of wish is lesser than pure force of will. So if you apply pure force of will, it will always act upon pure force of wish. That is why evil people live longer and good people die early, because evil people live by pure force of will. Good people live by pure force of wish. So the law of pattern rendition applies to the society, it applies to the human being, it applies to anybody, it applies to anything at all. So whatever it is that you desire in your life, if you are just there and you are wishing, what you are applying is called pure force of wish. It has no power to override an existing pattern, to change anything for you. The only thing that can change the existing pattern or whatever it is that you don't desire in your life is pure force of will. If you apply pure force of wish over a situation or over a pattern 1,000,000,000 times, someone who applies pure force of will one time will be far greater in terms of their results. It will override all the effort of your wish. Ask people, those who just wish about anything in life, they don't ever get it done, because wish is only a wish. It is as soft as anything you can imagine. It does not do anything. It has no force. So what overrides everything is the force. And the force is what we call will, pure force of will. So in the Logic Republic conversation, we are saying that for any society to attain a Logic Republic, and a society, an all participation society, where everything is tailored towards working for people, where the society is organized, where we talk about all participation and all purpose, that people would require pure force of will over pure force of wish. People would require pattern recognition. People would require pattern demolition, to demolish the existing pattern rendition. It is until this happens that you can have a lasting change. Otherwise, whatever it is that is happening, whatever evil that is in the society, whatever underdevelopment that the society is currently experiencing, if you think that you can change it by wish, it will never happen. because pure force of will is far greater than pure force of wish. The reason why the current pattern is working, even though it is negative, it is because there's a force applied on it. So for you to have a new system, you require a new culture, a culture that has serious force. And that culture is called intentionality greater than propensity. Fidelity to purpose equals intentionality greater than propensity. This is what we call the new culture. So it is time for us to begin to recognize that gun is not what kills us. Death, as the case may be, is not what kills us. It's not death that put an end to us. What put an end to us is the lack of culture that has the requisite force to keep us alive. This is what kills us. So it's time to embrace pattern mechanics. Welcome to Logic Republic once again. Thank you.